All right, if folks would be willing to settle down into their seats and wrap up their conversations, it's nice to hear the talk. Awesome. That didn't take long. You're a good crowd. All right, well, welcome to Big Ag, Big Problems, Land Stewardship Project panel discussion on rural consolidation. Thank you for joining us tonight. We know it's in the middle of the week on voting day, and we appreciate you coming out to hear these folks talk and interact with us. It's exciting to see both some familiar faces in the crowd and some new ones as well. My name's Alex Romano, and I live 5 miles outside of town. I work on the soil health team at Land Stewardship Project, or LSP as we like to call it. Land Stewardship Project is a 43-year-old nonprofit whose mission is to foster an ethic of stewardship for farmland, to promote sustainable agriculture, and to develop healthy communities. We work on issues ranging from new beginning farmer training. We work on soil health practice adoption, state and federal policy, developing community-based food systems. But all of our work is driven by our core values of stewardship, justice, fairness, democracy, health, and community. So what brings us here tonight? When we look around the countryside, we see things we know are not right and that do not fit with the future we want for ourselves and for generations to come. It's hard for us to look around our rural communities and see things that go against our values. We see our land being degraded, our drinking water polluted. Meanwhile, huge companies are controlling seeds and chemicals, buying grain and processing livestock, making huge profits. They're paying farmers less, making it next to impossible for them to succeed. We see rising land prices that drive more consolidation and block opportunities for new farmers. People in our communities are left out and left behind. We have seen before that times of economic uncertainty can fuel division, anti-immigrant sentiment, racist acts and policies, and those threats are on the rise again. Our local businesses struggle or close, while large corporations that are not invested in our communities take over or abandon us if there's not enough profit to be extracted. Health insurance premiums and deductibles are skyrocketing, while hospitals close and services get cut. Young people are told that opportunity is somewhere else. It's clear that some changes needed. So our purpose here tonight is to hear from two people who think a lot about the power of Big Ag and its negative impacts, Austin Frerick and Sonia Traum-Aris. They will lead a discussion about those large forces that are threatening our rural communities, but also how we're going to build the people power to take those on. This is an opportunity to take those first few steps, if you haven't already, towards building a farming system that cares for farmers and the land, has homegrown wealth, treats people fairly, and is resilient in the long term. So our plan for the evening, in a moment, I'm going to pass it to our moderator, Laura, who's going to run our panel, moderate 30 minutes of Q&A with Austin and Sonia. And then we will kick it over to the audience for some interaction and Q&A. Before we wrap up with some closing thoughts from our two authors, and then some LSP organizers and members will be coming up here to lead on taking some actions tonight with you. So if you, a couple of housekeeping things so to help you take care of yourselves and to fully participate, the bathrooms are out the back doors to your right, and there's also a water fountain out there. We have some popcorn and pretzels in the back. And yeah, if you need to stand up and listen or walk around a little bit, we just ask that you keep technology and distractions and that sort of thing to a minimum. And if you're having any trouble participating, you can reach out to myself or their staff in the back who could help you troubleshoot some things. But before I transition to Laura, I want to give a shout out to the organizers and the tech support and the volunteers, if you can raise your hand, who helped us tonight, make tonight possible. Yeah, that's people power. And I especially want to lift up my hardworking and gifted teammates, Pam and Elizabeth back there, who did a lot of the heavy lifting for this event. With that, thank you for joining us again tonight, and let's get started.
Thanks, Alex. Like Alex said, my name is Laura Schreiber. I'm Lancer Project's Government Relations Director, and really grateful for all of you being here tonight. And like Alex said, this really is a timely moment to be talking about consolidation and impacts on our rural communities as we're seeing tariffs, trade wars, et cetera. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. So grateful that you both are here tonight with us. So we have Sonia Traum-Ayers, who's the author of Dodge County Incorporated, Big Ag and the Undoing of Rural America. She's a farmer's daughter, rural advocate, involved in several rural advocacy organizations, including the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, Farm Action, Land Stewardship Project, and Dodge County Concerned Citizen. She's also serves as the business manager for the Traum Family Farm in Dodge County, Minnesota. And we have Austin Farrick, author of Barron's Money, Power, and the Corruption of America's Food Industry. He's an expert on agricultural and antitrust policy. He's worked at the Open Markets Institute, the U.S. Department of Treasury, and the Congressional Research Service before becoming a fellow at Yale University. He's a seventh generation Iowan and first generation college graduate, and with degrees from Grinnell College and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So thank you both for being here, and prepared some questions for tonight, but first just going to give you 10 minutes or so to kind of share more about your background, your work, and if you want more about your book, and what's brought you here tonight and why you're looking at these issues of consolidation on our agricultural and rural communities. So I'll turn it over to Austin first to kind of, I know you kind of provide the 10,000 foot view, especially with your book, and then Sonia can turn it to you, providing that local context.
Yeah, thanks again for having me here today. Well, first of all, we were talking beforehand how excited we both, one of the first things we both noticed driving here was how many cattle are on the land. That's very rare. I mean, I always notice if I see fence posts or not. Then on top of it, you have a sale barn. That is like, first of all, preserve that. Like make that like that's how you make sure farmers have good prices. Sorry, because like I'm from Eastern Iowa, and Iowa's full of all these abandoned hog barns. And like the second those things close, you see massive shift of profits from farmers to corporations. It's also really busy right now. But on that note, so my book profiles 8 robber barons in the food system, which first, by the way, I've been giving this talk at colleges, and I realized Gen Alphas, they don't know what robber barons were. So I had to explain that concept. But part of my goal in my book is to show you we've been here before. I just think we're living in another Gilded Age. And the beauty is that last Gilded Age ushered in like a reform movement. And so for me is you have to understand how we got to this moment. How do we get to a moment where like one person in Iowa does 5 million hogs? Actually, that little stat is why I did this book. I was telling someone earlier where you get the best information from like talking to people at dive bars and stuff, the best gossip. And I was in Des Moines, Iowa, and this is 2018. And Iowa had a big governor's race then. It was Kim Reynolds versus Fred Hubbell. And this person was telling me the largest donor in that race was a hog farmer. They had given the governor $300,000. Here's the thing, it wasn't just that stat, it was that this farmer had a jet with the words allegedly when pigs fly on it. First of all, that to me is beautiful. That's beautiful copy. But second, it's as weird as this sounds, I used to drive 151 all the time growing up from Cedar Rapids to the Dells. And that's dairy country. And at some point in my life, the cows disappeared. You smell them, but you don't see them. So I wanted, part of me is, I first started this as a magazine article. How did this happen? And there's a story told that this was over efficiency. When you realize when you dig into it, it's just a story of regulatory capture. The second you regulate industrial hog manure like human manure, that model is no longer economically viable. I mean, Iowa has 25 million hogs. Those things defecate 3 times more than us. That's manure of 75 million people. So that's Texas, Illinois, and California combined. At the same time, too, DNR has been gutted. Iowa has too much manure in the water. I mean, so when you read my book, my Iowa chapter to me, my hog baron chapter is, I'm just sad what happened to Iowa. I know I'm in Minnesota, but Iowa should be the Tuscany of North America. This part of the country. This is some of the best soil this country has. Yet Iowa to me is canary in the coal mine. Has the second highest cancer rate in America. Washington Post did a story last week where millennials in Iowa are showing really increasing cancer rates. There's a water crisis in Iowa and there's an obesity crisis. I view Iowa, and it's had the biggest political swing of any state in modern times. I view Iowa as an extraction colony now. The land's producing the most it's ever produced, and none of that wealth is staying there. And the politics are rage-filled the void. So, and I structured my book is I realized what the hog is. I see this across the food system. So I write about 8 different robber barons. As you read it, you'll kind of notice I didn't want to tell the same story over and over. So like my hog baron, I think of them as my trashy Florida money. And then my second baron's Cargill. I think of Cargill as Connecticut. You know, they're the largest private company in America, which blew my mind. They're bigger than the Koch brothers, but we know so little about them. When I first started researching them, I thought of Cargill like Standard Oil because they move 1 in 3, 1 in 4 grains globally. They're all about owning the middle, and they're not consumer facing, so you don't know who they are. So they're still in Russia to this day for that reason. But I finished that chapter realizing a better comparison of Cargill is actually the 19th century British Empire. I love that line because the sun never sets on their empire. I mean, here's the thing with this trade war right now. Those markets are not coming back. Let's be very blunt. 10 years ago, when Trump first did this, China industrialized soybean production in South America, and they could do 2 crops a year. So this is, even though there's a little payment, these markets just aren't coming back. But Cargill doesn't care because guess what? Cargill does soybeans down there. So part of this chapter with Cargill is about the Farm Bill. The original Farm Bill to me is, I think of it going back to the New Deal as Goldilocks. Is before the Farm Bill existed, during World War I, the American government asked farmers to step up because all this farmland in Europe was taken out of production. So farmers in America, they expanded, they grew. Then after the war, there was all this surplus. We didn't need that. So these markets were glutted, and then you had this ecological disaster happen where people were pushing their land to save their land, and it made the situation worse. So the Farm Bill comes along and says, you can get a little subsidy, you have to take land out of production. You have to do conservation. It's figuring out that sweet spot. Here's the thing, Cargill hated it. I had to read, Cargill commissioned its own personal history. It's 3 books, 1,600 pages. It's awful. But they hated FDR because they want overproduction of grain. Anything that limits grain, they don't like. Turns out, by the way, well-regulated markets are good for business. Cargill really boomed during FDR. But I tell this story of how Cargill systematically attacked the Farm Bill, where I focused on the 1996 Farm Bill. I call it the Wall Street Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is only built for Wall Street and no one else. And it's all designed to overproduce grains and nothing else. I mean, I said this at Iowa State last fall. That's why you get dumb things like ethanol. Is every year is a record corn and soy crop. So you have to come up with artificial uses. Like Econ 101 says, if there's a surplus, do something else. But now we come up with artificial uses, and now people want to put ethanol in their airplanes. Also, what I didn't appreciate until recently was how fragile this makes farms. The beauty of a family farm is you have a bunch of crops going, so if one market craters, you have other income sources. Honestly, it's kind of like a retirement portfolio. And what this system does now is it makes you do 1 or 2 things, which makes you very, very fragile. But they don't care. I mean, it used to be you used to grow your own feed to feed your own animals. Well, now it's either you grow corn, you sell it to Cargill, who then sells it back to the confinement owner, who then sells it back to Cargill. And you just realize how much of the system is not designed for farmers, eaters, or whatever. But like on that note, I should say, let's kind of wrap up these 2 big points. What shocked me the most is how bipartisan this is, because everyone's seeing the system not work. For the longest time, industry justified its BS because it made cheap food. That's not true anymore. The first slide I show people is actually a USDA chart. What Americans spend per person on groceries is higher than most of our Western peers. And we're paying more for junk because inputs matter, especially in dairy. Dairy is like the butter. When you have good butter, like cows on pasture make a really good product. Cows in New Mexico eating corn on a feedlot make a bad product. And we're seeing it now. And like also that's what cartels do. They gouge. You're being gouged at the store. And everyone's seeing it. I mean, that to me is what gives me the most hope at this moment is you just know at some point someone's going to tap into a Teddy Roosevelt-ness. Is we're not talking AI, we're talking hogs. Like we've done this before. This isn't rocket science.
Yeah.
So that's what gives me the most hope now is the system's broke, it's run its course, and everyone's seeing that work for different reasons. And the question is, what do we want that new system to be?
Awesome. Thanks, Austin. And yeah. Yeah, I just want to mention like earlier today, a group of LSP staff were visiting with a grazing dairy farmer, and he's talking about all these different industries that he has on his farm, vegetables, cash crops, beef, dairy, like seeing that resiliency that he's building in his operation. And as you're talking, it's like industry is pushing people, go to these two crops. Those are your only options, get bigger, get out of them, you know. So I appreciate, yeah, you thinking about how are we diversifying, and even you just saying coming into town here and seeing all the beef cattle on the land, like it's exciting. And how do we continue to do that? So thanks for providing that kind of like 10,000 foot view of what is our agricultural industry and the system right now. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sonia, to share more about yourself and also your book too.
Thank you. Well, I didn't set out to write a book. Let's just say it happened. So I grew up in Dodge County, that's the name of the book. And I grew up, my great grandfather came to the United States in 1892 from Norway. I grew up on my grandfather's farm, which is 2 miles north. And my dad was one of 10 children, and 8 of the 10 were actually born in the farmhouse. And so it's very special to be able to grow up on the same place as your aunts and uncles and parents, grandparents, and walk the same land. So we have very deep connections and lots of family in the area. I still have several cousins who live in the immediate area, first and second cousins. By the time the bus got to Blooming Prairie, about a third of us were related, I think, at least a third. So, and we're engaged, by the way, in production agriculture. So, just the thing we're talking about, corn and soybeans. And our farming operation really hasn't changed all that much in probably 50 plus years. But the neighbors around us have changed. They're the ones that no longer have animals. They're the ones that have factory farms with hogs. We have 12 swine factory farms in a 3-mile radius. People have no idea how serious it is. And, but we started to notice in the early 90s that things were changing. And I talked to my dad about it. My dad died a few years ago at age 90. And 1993 was the first factory farm that went up 1 mile north of our farm. It was a young man that I babysat, actually. A Farm Bureau farmer, I want you to tuck that away, because they have been integral in promoting these factory farms and using their membership to install factory farms. So first one went up in 93, the second one in 98. That 5-year period was critical because what was happening, my sister Shelley and her husband Dave farmed outside our hometown of Blooming Prairie. And they were independent farmers. They owned their own hogs. And Dave and his dad would deliver hogs to Hormel in Austin. And Dave and his dad both informed me that during that 5-year window, they were slowly noticing that they were getting kind of put off by Hormel and the other meat packers. And it was becoming more and more difficult to deliver. So the independents like Dave were forced to wait 45 minutes to an hour while the hogs that were coming in from these big factory farms were coming in semi-loads. That was unheard of, to have semi-loads of hogs. They were coming in by the semi-loads and given first priority. So they were rushed through the marketplace while Dave and Frank's hogs were dropping weight. Then in 1998, that was the breaking point, and independents like Dave and Shelley could no longer get financing, couldn't get their operating loan, but there was big money. So it's the old saying, get big or get out. But there was big money if they wanted to construct a factory farm. And they painfully made the decision, here they were in their early 40s, to get out of farming altogether. And Dave's parents, and later sold the farm. But this is what happened to thousands and thousands of farmers. And so that was kind of our first inkling, like, something is terribly wrong. Then fast forward to like 2000, 2001, that's when my family first came in contact with Land Stewardship Project. Thank you, God. And my brother Brad was very involved because 3 or 4 miles north of our farm, they were going to install Ripley Dairy. Ripley Dairy at the time would have been the largest dairy operation in the state of Minnesota. And Land Stewardship Project community, it was a bipartisan group of neighbors and friends, and who all joined together to fight Ripley Dairy. And then one little story I want to tell you about during that time, that was a 3 or 4 year fight. And one night the meeting was moved to the Claremont High School. And Claremont is between Owatonna and Rochester on Highway 14. So the neighbors go into it, honest to God, just like this. 200 folding chairs are set up, and those chairs were occupied by corporate executives from Monsanto, Cargill, Hormel, Land O'Lakes, and others. And most of the neighbors had to stand. And so here were the citizens who had to stand at that meeting. And so it was a corporate power play, and but the neighbors held their ground. Thanks to the work of Land Stewardship Project, which helped to organize and put in place local planning and zoning. If I took you to Ripley Township today, you're not going to see many factory farms. Westfield, where our farm is, off the charts. So, because there's no local planning and zoning. So it's night and day. Now, you fast forward, and by the way, the neighbors were successful in fighting off Ripley Dairy thanks to Land Stewardship. So thank you, LSP. And then now fast forward, 2014, my mother had just gone into the nursing home. She had advanced Parkinson's. She suffered from advanced Parkinson's for many years. And just a few months after she went into the nursing home, I'm an attorney in downtown Minneapolis. One of my retired business partners is here, thank you. And so I'm driving home, and I'll never forget the phone call with my dad, because he received a 10-day notice that yet another swine factory farm was going in the immediate area. 10-day notice, that was it. This one a half mile west of our farm. And he said, enough is enough. And so I helped my dad find legal counsel. My parents initiated the first of 3 separate legal actions against Dodge County officials and local industry insiders, and discovered that all of these positions had been stacked with industry insiders, thus the name Dodge County Incorporated. And almost immediately, the harassment, the intimidation started. Telephone calls to my elderly father, who was in his mid-80s. These calls would come in the middle of the night. Lowell, have you changed yet? My brother and I were in the bean field pulling weeds out, just 100 feet, maybe 200 feet from the stop sign. And a few hours later, it was sprayed with bullets. Several false telephone calls to the local sheriff's department to call the sheriff on me. That happened 3 or 4 times. And not to report that I was doing something illegal, but to put the heat on me and try to get me to shut up. So people in rural America have been silenced. And this is some of the big business nonsense or BS that we're seeing in rural America. And we've seen it for decades. And they're silenced because their jobs are threatened, their businesses are threatened, and they don't dare speak out. But I'm in a rare position to speak out. So a friend encouraged me to start writing a book. I'm a family law attorney by day and doing book events at night. Thank you. So, but I tell my clients who are going through a very painful time in their lives, like divorce, to write, to journal. We may use it, we may never use it, but it is part of your healing process. And for me, I took my own advice. Finally, I'm going to start writing. So I started writing. My computer, I wish you could see my keyboard. So some of the letters are missing, but it was cheaper than therapy. So that's kind of how the book came apart. And but one of the things I want to tell you that's in the book that was a huge revelation. I get decisions of the Minnesota Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. And one day I see a decision that comes across my desk and I recognize the name. This is a pyramid scheme that has been put in place. And so imagine a triangle, a pyramid. At the top, you have the multinationals. In the hog industry, there are 4 multinationals that control an estimated 70% of the market. Hormel, JBS, which is owned by the Brazilians, Smithfield, which is owned by the Chinese, and Tyson. Those big 4 control 70%. In the middle, you have integrators. Those integrators own the supply chain. They own the hogs. And they also provide feed and veterinary services to the contract growers at the bottom. Those contract growers are what we used to call farmers. This is a closed system. It's a private club. And you can't get in. You can't just deliver a load of hogs to Hormel. You have to sign a contract with an integrator and agree to take those pigs, and you have to agree to put up a large industrial factory farm. This is not a free market. This is a closed market. So the big boys control the market. And the same thing is true, and I'm sure Austin's going to get into it, with respect to chickens, certainly hogs, and beef. So thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. So to start, I know you both have been traveling around extensively across the state and the country, sharing about your book and respective books. And I'm just kind of curious to start, what have been the reactions that you've been getting from people as you're going around the country and talking with folks, or if there's been things that surprise you as you're talking about these topics across the country? Yeah. Sonia, do you want to start?
Sure. I would say the response has been overwhelming, quite honestly. And really what I've discovered, and I told my publisher this as we were getting ready to go to press. I said, this is not my story. This is our story, because there are so many families who are in the same situation and are afraid to tell their stories. And I can't tell you how many people have contacted me to say thank you. In fact, I received a note the other day. I want to just read this to you because this was on, I think, over the weekend. A woman contacted me from Iowa. Thank you for your very important book. It has changed my worldview and inspired me to action. That's what I hear repeatedly, that people want to take action. They want to know, what can I do? How can I help? And it's also been helpful for people. It's opened a dialogue, and it's helped people talk about these very, very difficult and painful things that are happening in their rural communities. Because for those of us in rural America who have ties, we know that rural America is in a crisis.
Thank you, Sonia. Yeah, and especially, I like that you brought up people feeling empowered to speak up and to take action, especially when we know there's such entrenched powers to keep you silent. So thank you for bringing that up. Austin. There we go.
For me personally, first, I was telling someone earlier, you have to see America to understand America. I love that, because I also realize I have such an Iowa view of farming. Like, every region of America has a different production model, and I find that so cool. That, like, I do little road trips after I do like speaking engagements. I did Idaho a few weeks ago. I went to the Potato Museum. But for me, and I think this shows my family has a little bit of both political parties. And I've been very intentional with my book of I didn't want to be pigeonholed as one. My favorite review actually came from the American Conservative saying, quote, every conservative should read this book. I love that. I believe things get done in American history when weird bedfellows get together. If they want us to fight over the little issues, like you got to read, instead of blame the immigrant, blame Tyson's. People want to fight it right now. I've been in the weirdest spaces. Remember the show Texas Walker Ranger? So that used to be filmed down in Dallas, the old Paramount studio. Glenn Beck bought that. I went on that for an hour of this last summer. And my book did really because of the meat stuff. Everyone's seen like meat weirdly is fixing the meat markets, I think is the most bipartisan thing right now in America. Like I'm so convinced of that. Joe Rogan has really changed the diets of young men in ways that I don't think has been appreciated. Cottage cheese sales are through the roof right now because it has high protein. For the first time in 40 years, milk sales went up last year. And I think it's because of these podcasts. Like young men are really into. You go to Planet Fitness into these gyms. I go to Planet Fitness. Young men are like the amount of they're obsessed with their bodies. And I say this because I'm shocked the different pockets of America that this hits with. And the one that probably the other one that shocked me the most was I went on Bloomberg, their big podcast a few times now, and how much that world gets it. Because it's like the yuppies, they go to Europe, they're like, oh, it was cheaper and I lost weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're finally seeing the pain of this system. That's what it's just weird. The analogy, this is a weird one. Hear me out. You know that movie when you're little, the first adult movie you watch? Mine was Forrest Gump. And that really like broke me as a kid because like it was the first time I saw like an adult die. And my mom, and I freaked out to my mom, I'm like, Mom, did we pick the wrong religion? And my mom explained religion to me, and I'll never forget this, as a bunch of blind people touching an elephant. They're describing something different, but it's the same thing. And that's kind of how I see the food system now, is everyone's articulating a different thing, but they're all getting at a bigger thing. And for me personally, I just want to add on to what I was saying earlier is I think the single best thing we could do to rural America is put animals back in the land. Because here's the silver lining is ethanol's gonna die. Cars are moving to hybrids and EVs. That's just a fact of life. What are we gonna do? Because right now it's like watching Wile E. Coyote run off a cliff. We probably have 10, 20, 30 years left of combustible engine, but the timeline's there. Is because I don't think people realize, I actually think ethanol's been really disruptive to the Midwest. Because first of all, it pushed animals off the land. It made renting grazing land much more expensive. A lot of it's going to largely be robotic soon. It's really, to me, driving the cancer crisis in Iowa because people are farming corn right up to the creek, and it's usually renters. And the people that live in Long Beach, California, don't care how the farm practices. So you know that moment's coming, but let's start thinking about that now. Because also, the thing too I realized is no one in my family did dairies, but I visited a few dairy farms. You just realize dairy farmers have the most intimate relationship with their animal. They treat them like dogs. They'll tell you the personality of every dairy cow, and that's been lost in this system. But here's the thing. There's only so much cows on pasture one farmer can look after. You can't do robotics that. You know what I mean? You do robotic milkers here and there, but that's what I want to get back to is restoring that middle-class family farm. Because that's rural America thrived when we had that.
Awesome, thanks. And it just makes me think again of the farmer that we visited earlier because we were with his little boy was coming around with us as we're touring his farm, and he's naming all the cows in the pasture, like, oh, that's Lemon, that's Lionel, whatever else. And yeah, you lose that when you have a large industrial system like that. And just another thing you said that maybe instead of a pork checkoff or a beef checkoff, apparently Joe Rogan and the podcast will do that.
But honestly, like the hatred towards the checkoff has really grown the last few years, and it's because of cattle ranchers. The cattle ranchers on Instagram are incredibly vocal about this. I mean, talk about weird bedfellows. You have Cory Booker of New Jersey working with Mike Lee of Utah to reform the checkoff. That's one of the weirdest bedfellows in Congress right now. And I just think, like, run to that. Like, get that done. Because the checkoffs, the scary thing about the checkoff is actually the pork one for me. As Sonia said, the largest owner of hogs in America is Chinese, largest butcher in America is Chinese. So the largest parent of the pork checkoff is really the voice of a Chinese multinational.
Right.
For those of you who don't know,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
every time you sell a commodity, they withhold. So we've been selling corn and soybeans. So I go through all the tickets and there's the checkoff amount for you can, and I can get the money back from the corn growers, but I can't get it back on the soybean growers. But I try and make sure that I get every dime back from the Corn Growers Association. So,
And they're
There
using
you go.
farmers' money against them, especially dairy.
well, but with hogs too, because what happens is, so the pork board administers. So you've got the national pork board, and then you've got state associations. So in Minnesota, the pork board is over in Mankato, but you have the same office that holds the the Minnesota Pork Board and the Minnesota Pork Producers Association, the MPPA. It's the same people, it's the same staff. But when you use checkoff dollars, you're prohibited from using those dollars for lobbying efforts. So, you know,
I'm gonna add on to this. So an undercurrent you'll read in my book is my anger towards Tom Vilsack. Here's one little example of Tom Vilsack, everything you need to know. First of all, let me use a joke. You guys remember the musical Music Man? Okay. I thought everyone's seen that. I go out on the East Coast, no one's seen it. He is Harold Hill. He will tell you what you want to hear, but his words mean absolutely nothing. And the best fact I have, two facts are: one, in 2002, one of the biggest issues in the governor's race in Iowa was opposition to hog confinements. Vilsack was running for re-election as governor. He was running against a head lobbyist from a hog baron. Vilsack was running ads saying he would do something, because you had small town gyms in Iowa being filled because people were like, their properties were being destroyed. Their quality of life was being destroyed. And the way Iowa works is only the governor of Iowa can stop the construction of confinements. After Vilsack won on this issue, not only did he not do anything, he oversaw the largest expansion of hog confinements in Iowa history. That is incredibly detrimental to democracy. When someone says they're here to help and they stab you in the back. Because at least the lobbyist was like, he wasn't pretending to be your friend.
At least honest about where he
yeah,
stands and
but
very clear.
Just to add up, to take Vilsack back to the checkoffs, between working for President Biden and Obama, he was an industrial dairy lobbyist, working for a checkoff, making $1 million a year, trying to basically dump industrial dairy abroad and destroy Canada's dairy family farm dairy system.
Right, which I was going to get to this question later, but it seems timely now. With policy, policy drives so much of what we're talking about right now, both the local, state, federal level, of course, with the Farm Bill. And I'm curious to hear from you both. What do you think in the more immediate term, especially more at like local, state level, could be done with policy? But then thinking longer term vision, like what would you like to see for ag system policy wise? And I don't know which. Sonia, do you want to take it first?
sure. Policy wise. So my heroes are groups like Land Stewardship Project, but also I've been working with folks over in Western Wisconsin. They are fighting expansion of a dairy operation to 6,500 dairy cows, and it could expand up to 7,800. That facility will be a quarter of a mile long near the Mississippi River. What could possibly go wrong? But what those folks have done in Western Wisconsin, they are super organized, and they are going township by township, and they are passing local ordinances to limit the proliferation of these large factory farms. And if they're there are all kinds of checks that are in place. And let me tell you, this has the attention of the milk mafia over in Wisconsin. They're going to Madison. They're trying to trump that provision and come in on the state level and get rid of local control. This is exactly what happened in Iowa. They got rid of local control, and those people are sitting ducks. They have no control over what gets put next door. And the same thing happened in North Dakota. I was in North Dakota probably 2015, 16, somewhere in there. They had local control. And they were trying, hog industry was trying to move in and put in place great big hog operations. And So they asked me to come up. I didn't even, I think I was maybe writing the book at that point. I don't even know. But this started to get the attention. They also brought in another national group, SRAP, Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, to help fight back. Well, guess what? North Dakota has also lost local control. The wheels are off. North Dakota is going to become the next Iowa. And
No, it's. I didn't realize Iowa became derogatory until I was in
Yeah,
Wisconsin 2
sorry.
years ago. Sorry, no, but it's like
Well, there are a lot of jokes, but we won't go there.
Yeah, but do you want to share maybe what some policy ideas or things that come to mind for you? Like, here's what it could look like at the local or state or federal level to start breaking down these monopolies and consolidation within our industry.
yeah. Let me start with the thing I really come to realize is DC is always the last to know. These things always start locally. So, fun fact for Iowa, the first anti-monopoly laws in the world came out of Iowa. Because farmers mad about the grain elevators and the railroads. So Iowa did something. A bunch of other states copied it. The federal government eventually did something, and then it took a few presidents till we got Teddy Roosevelt by accident to do something. And I say this because we tell history, we truncate it. But really, always starts locally, and it snowballs its way to DC. And I'm saying that because, like, I'm researching the New Deal right now, and what people don't realize is a lot of that comes out of Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Wisconsin, like, unemployment insurance was created in Wisconsin. And I say this because I'm also what I'm seeing now is like that's what I want to focus on right now is social media rewards the crazy, but you realize most people when you are in the middle, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on. Like actually, I think it's been underappreciated how much cool indigenous food stuff is going on in Wisconsin, Minnesota right now. And like just really focus. I think right now people are just they're so used to seeing bad stuff, they crave hope. Like what could the system be? You got to articulate that. That's why I always say Iowa should be Tuscany. Is you got to articulate the positive so people can get through the dark moment. So locally, just to start off is as we phase out this old system, you got to build a new one, and using institutional buyers are everything. This might be my like uh, old-fashioned Catholic showing, but like I'm over the era of carrots. I want to use sticks. Old Testament, I should say. Like I'm working with a Texas Republican state senator in Corpus Christi about mandating a bill in Texas where public universities have to buy X amount percent locally. I don't care about these little pots of money. They're not using it. Because part of it is Texas cattle ranchers are in an existential moment right now with all this South American beef flooding their markets. And I'm sorry, these college, like, and I say this because I went to a little school in Iowa called Grinnell. Warren Buffett was a trustee. They have a ton of money. One of the most famous produce farms in Iowa was across the street. This college had the endowment to buy the produce. Guess what? It didn't. It was buying the most 40% of your veggies are imported now from like Mexico. It was buying that. And that farm went broke. And that really scared a lot of people in that world. And it's just, I'm just at the stick point. We got like, I mean, here's the thing. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in Wisconsin. Minnesota. You have a really good AG who really gets this and cares about this. Who's doing like, and he's investigating it. Like, this is what you gotta, what I kind of realize is people have forgotten how to do this stuff. Like, for example, my little pet peeve is milk is incredibly concentrated because even we talk about these markets, we use national figures. This stuff is local. I don't know if anyone in this room reads Milkweed. Pete Hardin writes it. He wrote a paper for a conference I did where in New England, one company has an 85% market share in milk. I don't need PhD in econ to know that people are not paying a fair price for milk. And you also know that all the school districts are probably being gouged for the school milk. But you need state AGs like Keith Ellison to look into those markets. And you got to help them. I mean, that's what the biggest thing I can tell you in this room is see something, say something. I mean, I love doing these events because I get the best gossip. But the one example I use, and this is kind of extreme, is you know the movie Fargo? You know the mulch scene at the end? A confinement owner was taking their hogs and throwing them into a mulcher in western Iowa. An older woman and I was literally driving on a road and saw a hog leg in the field. Report to DNR. DNR didn't do anything. So you know what she did? She called local TV news. Guess what? That blew up. Guess what? Something was done. And it's because she said something. Don't get mad on social media. That doesn't do anything anymore. Send an email. Be nice. Be respectful. There's so much power you have to do that. And it's also kind of fun when that comes out.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we hosted speaking of great AG, Keith Ellison, had an event with him in August, but encouraging farmers, like when you're seeing instances of consolidation and unfair contracts, send that to his office because they're looking for that information. They can't, begin a lawsuit until they actually have folks who are coming forward with evidence or willing to be those story sharers and yeah, be able to be the front face.
And
for
just
that.
add on, you can be totally secret about this. You don't need to go on the record or anything. Like when I wrote my book, the two people that reached out to me the most and it shocked me were one, confinement owners, because they're being squeezed now. There's massive consolidation in confinements even.
Yeah.
And the other one that was kind of wild but makes sense are Walmart suppliers.
Oh,
Because you
interesting.
don't negotiate with Walmart. Walmart is the closest thing this country has ever had to a Soviet Union style Politburo. Because Walmart dictates to you. And these suppliers have told me all these. I've had hot sauce people from the South reach out to me, or like just random suppliers. Because just it's so abusive, the relationship. No one's listening, but and I tell them you got to talk to the AG so people can bring these cases. Because right now, keep in mind, local news is dying in a lot of rural communities. So normally these stories would come through local media. I mean, I was able to write my hog chapter because the Des Moines Register used to be a phenomenal newspaper. They had a whole team of agriculture reporters. They had a whole section paper on agriculture. That's gone. We now live in an era where so much news in that ecosystem is paid for by the checkoffs, which is really scary.
Yeah, well, and one of the things, like just talking about, in both your books, you're exposing the entrenched, heavily resourced power that exists. And, just talking a little bit, I think, of people coming forward, like one of the themes that I know previously in our, we talked previously, courage and thinking about what does that mean during this, and coming forward and speaking truth to power. And yeah, I'm kind of curious about like what your relationship to courage looks like, especially being out front on these issues and people coming to you. Like, how are you orienting yourself or bringing that to others? Sonia?
Um, so, as a family law attorney, I've been doing this 36 years. I am trained in power and control dynamics. And I would encourage all of you to take a look at, it's called the power and control wheel or the domestic violence wheel, because I see a lot of relationships where there is a huge power imbalance. And when I started this journey, especially in the last 10, 11 years with my parents, um, immediately I could tell like there was this power imbalance. And so I could see all the same things that I see in these unhealthy marriages, I see in unhealthy local communities. It's the same power and control dynamics. It's economic abuse, it's harassment and intimidation, it's using children, it's using privilege. Those are all part of that power and control wheel. And so for me, I don't know if it was so much courage, but just kind of uh, connecting the dots and being able to just see the same dynamics in play, just in a different context.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm curious, Austin, for you, like what your relationship to courage and yeah, writing this book and also just having people reach out and connect to you, writing it, how that has taken shape for you.
Yeah, so just 3 points that come to my mind is one, just building off that power thing. Is first of all, you've got to join an organization. You can't do this stuff alone. It's fun to be part of a team, and that's why I always say start locally because it's those little victories that snowball. Like getting the local farmer you really like paired into the school, so you're serving their local beef. That's a cool thing. That's a cool story. It's also like you feel like you can accomplish something because you're not going to change DC. Nothing's going to happen for the next year or two. Like I think we all know that.
It's a fair bet. Yeah.
Yeah. But the two things for courage I go back to is I think an underappreciated thing is the backbone of this tends to be pissed off old ladies in real America, is what I've noticed. My book opens with one. No. I just realized that, my book opens with Julie Dunn. She's a retired administrative assistant in Eldora, Iowa, and she spends her retirement fighting CAFOs. She can read a PDF of these applications and know every little thing. And like I had a few of them else in my book, and they asked me to take their names out of the book. One of them in particular told me, "I just do this for fun."
I had a number of people that you still see in my book that They did. They absolutely said, absolutely not. You cannot put my name in the book. So you'll see a number of pseudonyms. Even, and I'm telling you, these are people, this is 15 and 20 plus years later, are still afraid to come out of the woodwork. But I think that the book, in terms of courage, I think it's given others courage. It's opened a door for people to talk about these issues. They don't have to be afraid. They're finding out that I'm no different than my neighbor. I don't like this either. And they're watching the changing dynamics in their community, and they don't like it.
And those are the people showing the most courage, because people like Julie don't have a lot to lose because the way power is exercised locally. I will say for me personally, it's number one is I don't have kids right now and I don't have any assets. So like take, you know what I mean? Like take my books. So, but it's also like, if not now, then when? Like that's what's kind of driving me is like Iowa broke and they win when the status quo holds. So you got to put on a show. You know what I mean? This is all kind of political theater. Like this is all about getting people just to care and showing that. Like it's and the thing is, the guy who wrote Fast Food Nation wrote my foreword and was kind of my mentor in this, Eric Schlosser. He kind of gave me the talk before my book came out. He told me they don't attack you in the press anymore usually because they know that kind of gives you attention. What they do is they actually attack you behind the scenes. They undermine your living in ways that you don't really know. And so I have a framed email in our house because the head of the pork chuck off in Iowa emailed my dean at Yale over a tweet I did. I got married in a small town in Iowa, and I tweeted out we were going to a wedding thing, and there's a 3 or 4 story confinement going up. Right? And so China has these 10-story ones now. So I took a picture and I tweeted, the first multi-story confinement comes to Iowa. It went a little viral. Des Moines Register did a story. This lobbyist emailed my dean this long threatening email. The email that my dean forwarded on to me saying, like, don't worry about it. Here's the thing. I know if I was at Iowa State, I would have been fired and I would never know why.
Right.
And people will tell you this privately. They don't want to go on the record because they're trying to survive. That is how this game is now played. That is how they control the conversation. I mean, look at Iowa State for Pete's sake. There's a cancer crisis in Iowa, and there's nothing come out of Iowa State about the cancer crisis. All they can talk about is ethanol and airplanes. I just don't get it.
Well, and I think one of the closing questions here, and then we'll open up to you all, but like to your point of needing people to come together, because like you have these entrenched power systems and there is so much happening behind the scenes, but people banding together, joining groups, speaking out to this. I'm curious, I know like there's examples within both of your books of groups coming together, but if you can share stories, even as you've been traveling around, of like more of that tangible victories or making progress, and what you've seen people coming together and talking out about this. I'm just kind of curious if there's additional stories that come to mind for that.
Well, I can tell you kind of where all the hot spots are right now. So because I see these communities coming together, and so it's Western Wisconsin. There are also great big dairy CAFOs that are being proposed, confined animal feeding operations near Madison and also Milwaukee. The Dakotas is a real hot spot right now. They're fighting back hog confinements, and they're also fighting large dairy operations. There's a huge dairy operation just south of Fargo, 12,500 dairy cows that's being proposed near 2 rivers, the Red River and the Wild Rice River. North of Fargo, they're proposing a 25,000 head dairy operation. I mean, it's ridiculous numbers. So I think those are some of the victories, because I'm seeing these communities come together. Kansas, I know there's groups in Kansas and Missouri, so a number of states where the communities are coming together. But the problem is it's always the same storyline. It's the sneak attack. And if you've ever read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, honest to God, you need to read it, because it's that playbook over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Austin, is there anything that you want to add before we go into audience?
Yeah, this is a kind of a parallel one where I think one of the most important political appointments President Biden did was when he appointed Lena Khan to chair the Federal Trade Commission. He appointed a 31-year-old woman to chair it, young mother. She's the one that filed all those big tech monopoly lawsuits. That when she first of all, what was fascinating was the politics of it. You had Matt Gaetz praising her in the Wall Street Journal for it. Steve Bannon was praising her. Now we've seen the Trump administration drop a lot of them, but she is to me, she's an historical figure. And she goes to any law school in America now, all the kids want to be here. Because you know that statue of the little girl taking on the Wall Street Bull? She is that statue. People want to fight her right now. And I say this because President Biden didn't just appoint her. There was a movement of people behind the scenes really pushing personnel. Personnel is policy. Like, who is in these? Because when you elect a president, when you elect a governor, you're electing tons of appointees. Who do you want in these positions? Do you want another Tom Vilsack or not? That's the big question. So that to me is like the success of the big tech folks going after with getting her appointment is huge. Because not only can she exercise power, she gets a ton of people into the bureaucracy that really want to exercise power. She helps people like Keith Ellison do their jobs. The law schools are changing because of her. You have all this. You don't change a ship overnight. We didn't get here overnight. The legal doctrine takes a while, but it's shifting, like really, really shifting. I mean, Jon Stewart. Remember that clip that went viral? Jon Stewart told him he got fired because of her work on Apple. I mean, this is a woman that's 35 now that there's going to be biographies written on her, and she's only getting started. Like, that's what's incredible. And so take that. Like, I don't want to convince Vilsack to do the right thing. He's not going to do the right thing. Who in this room can have that position of power, who has the right intentions, will actually do something? That's the goal.
Awesome.
One comment I would make that just reminds me, this is on the back of my book. This is a blurb from Senator Cory Booker. He says, "The people have the power to fight back." We have to remember that.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good transition moment to audience Q&A. So we do have Pam is going to be running around with a roving mic, and do want to hear from a variety of people. So just politely ask that you keep your question rather brief. And if not, I might politely interrupt you, just sort of forewarning. But yeah, if you want to raise your hand, and then we can open it up for questions. Okay. Yeah, one in the back.
All right. Okay. We're not farmers and we don't know what checkoff means.
So the checkoffs go back to the New Deal originally. It goes out of Florida, where farmers really checked a box, pay into a pot of money to advertise their good. Drink my Florida orange juice. There's like 25 of them now. Most of them don't matter. There's like a Christmas tree of popcorn. They're the things that they try to hand you little things for free. Meat and dairy tend to be different because they're so big. So dairy alone right now is a $600 million pot of money that there's no oversight at USDA. I mean, there's so many inspector general reports of like no oversight. And so it's happening, and also because of vertical integration, those organizations now do the bidding of corporate interest, not the farmer. It's really nerdy, but my whole dairy chapter is on this because I think it controls everything in the food system right now. Because the revolving door at USDA, basically you work at checkoffs, you go back to USDA, you do this. Because keep in mind, checkoffs really grew in the 80s because of overproduction of stuff. We're producing too much cheese instead of doing like, well, let's grow less cheese. It's now checkoffs employ people at Taco Bell to put more cheese into Taco Bell food. So it's just, you have one part of government saying eat less cheese, another part of government saying eat more cheese.
In front, yeah.
Just a little comment.
Sorry,
Oh, go
can
ahead.
I comment quickly? Checkoffs, nationally, there are like $1 billion a year that are collected in checkoff dollars. Those checkoff dollars are controlled by the industry. And so those dollars can be used for research, promotion, and advertising or marketing, but they cannot be used for lobbying. So that's why you end up with, like with the Minnesota Pork Board, you've got the Pork Board doing legitimately what they're supposed to do. Then they have their lobbying arm over here, the MPPA. Well, I got to tell you, I really question what's going on. And there's a number of states have asked for an investigation of those checkoff dollars, because we know there's wrongdoing that's going on here.
Just a little comment about going local. So a couple things about Lanesboro right here. So you commented on the sale barn, and that is why there's so many cows that you saw on the countryside. I happen to have a nephew who lives just south of Albert Lee in Northwood, Iowa. He drives, not only has his own cows, but he also, or cattle, but he also goes out and picks up everybody's cattle in the whole area, brings them here to the sale barn for them to be sold. Okay, then just one other funny little bit of history is that Lanesboro, back in 1870, had one of the very first Cargill offices down by the railroad. It was office number 9. It was about a 4x4 building.
Just to add on to that, talk to your nephew about how do you preserve. I think of sale barns like eBay. You know, the competitive live markets, you get the best price because you get real price discovery instead of terms being dictated. How do you preserve that? Is there some legislation Minnesota can pass to preserve sale barns? How do you make, so there's pending legislation at the federal level right now to essentially have X% of cattle must be sold on the open market, but DC's not doing anything. Can you do something in Minnesota where you mandate that X% of Minnesota cattle has to be in a sale barn? Like, the politics on this are pretty interesting. I would lean into it, but like mandate that, because if you don't mandate it, they're going to try to kill it.
That sounds like some good homework for me. So additional questions? Yeah, in front.
You 3 panelists up there, do you eat meat?
Yes.
Why? Why do you eat meat?
Because I'm careful with what I eat. I'm careful with what I eat and where it's sourced.
You can get what you need from other products without eating meat. So what I'm getting at is, you said on that book, we have the power. Most of the hogs in this country that are being raised, are they being eaten in this country?
About a third are going for export. So we're exporting the meat.
Yep.
And we're importing the pollution.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we've just created a cesspool. We've lost.
Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't feed
We've
China,
lost the
but that's not.
ability to raise other crops other than meat.
Because they're not subsidized. If I grow a carrot, I don't get $1 of the farm bill.
I know it. Why?
Because that's my whole point in my book is we should change the farm bill.
Yeah.
We should subsidize farm practices, not crops.
So
we gotta stop picking favorites.
I have to assume Senator Finstead's not in this room. Touche.
Our farm is in his district. So, yeah. He, by the way, worked for Christensen Farms. So when I talked about the pyramid, Christensen Farms is one of the largest integrators in the United States. They own a huge percentage of that supply chain. He is in Congress for a reason, not to protect democracy, but to protect the corporate bottom line.
Yep, go ahead.
Yes, I want to talk to 2 different points. One is the economics. And I actually had now going to go on a paper that I responded to, a book that I read, Minnesota 13, Stearns County's Wet Wild Prohibition Days. There was a huge alcohol still west of Blooming Prairie. And I'm looking at that, it was a whole farm economy. But today, I see good things happening when it comes to co-ops. Albert Lee has got a huge grain co-op, farmers grain co-op. We import 90% of our grain, and a lot of it Northfield. The economics is just not there. It's same with meat. I mean, you can't compete. The other part about it I want to make is essentially health. We have a cancer, heart disease epidemic in this country. There's no wonder. There's an interesting book that I reread again called Going Driftless, Life Lessons from the Heartland for Unraveling Times. This was in 2011, 2013, a 45,000 study, 18-month survey to compare organic milk from grass-pastured cows and non-organic milk from conventional dairies. The biggest problem we found, omega-3, omega-6, omega-3 ratios. High omega-6 ratios causes heart disease. You get cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease. In fact, cholesterol-lowering drugs will cause dementia. But you won't hear that research because the drug companies own the media. But anyway, that's a couple of things that popped up when it came to economics and also health.
Yeah, what I realize and never forget is everything is subsidized that we eat. The question is to what degree. We are choosing right now to subsidize chips and pop. It takes money to be healthy in this country. I mean, one of the hardest things to talk about in my book is the obesity crisis, because we frame it as a personal thing when really it's structural. In the history of mankind, it used to be the rich were the overweight class. Now it's flipped. The first time in the history of mankind, the lower incomes are the overweight class. And the way this whole obesity drug thing too is going to hit this country is who knows. That's something to really keep in mind. And like, you know what? The one time I had one interview I did for a media outlet that got junked, and it was over that point because I'll be honest. You know that show America's Test Kitchen? It's on PBS. There's a guy with a bow tie. Me and him went at it. He blamed poor people for being fat. He's like, they need to like learn how to cook and stuff. I was like, you don't know what it is to like work. You don't know what it is to be that close to the line. Like, I've had those moments in my life where you're like, first of all, fun little fact: on when days people get SNAP money, Hot Pockets have a really big sale increase at Walmart. Think about it though. You get a carb, you get a protein, and you get a vegetable, and it's quick. It's a really smart purchase. And also, when you're near the edge of the line, when you're poor, this food is it's a quick dopamine hit. Like, who isn't? I'm sorry, I love Cheez-Its. Who isn't happy after Cheez-Its? And so, like, and it's that kind of mindset that's like really been on. Like, there's a snobbery to that world. But the question is, we can choose to subsidize a different system. We can choose to subsidize vegetables if we want.
Sonia, did you clap for that? Sonia, do you want to comment? Okay. Any other questions? Looks like we have one. Oh, sorry.
Well, that was my question. How do we change crop subsidies?
So, in Chippewa Falls, I should say old Line and Kugels. But the Wisconsin Farmers Union have been letting me use their cabin there because I'm working on a second book and I want to write a book on solutions. Because everyone knows things are broken, but no one knows what to do. And I just drafted the Farm Bill chapter. Is I think we should move to the subsidizing farm practices. I don't like picking favorites. And that's partly traveling America. Is what works in California is going to be different than Iowa, different than northern Wisconsin. Farmers know what's best for their land. Let them pick. But right now we should make it so that cover crops make economic sense, so that doing buffer strips make economic sense. Because right now, what I realized, and this is such a weird thing to say, my college buddies and I do a trip every year. We went down to the Cajun part of Louisiana a few years ago. We went fishing with this guy, and he's a fisherman on the week, and he does like fishing things on the weekend, fishing tour guides. And it was so fun to talk to him about fishing because I don't know seafood markets. But you're saying like he monitors the weather up here because the weather up here impacts his livelihood days later. And he has a very ecological view of what he does. But I realized talking to a lot of corn farmers in Iowa, that's gone. The system right now, it changes your brain to think about how much corn can I get out of this field. That's all you can think about. Because here's the thing, if you don't think that way, you're gonna go broke. But it warps your brain instead of realizing the land's being destroyed. And what for? To burn it, to waste it in your car? So that's why I want to get to this system. Because right now, people are behaving rationally. Like if you don't do this, like you want to have empathy. Like you don't want to blame them. I mean, to Sonia's point earlier, to me, the big villain here is Farm Bureau. What organization has its membership decline, but its revenue increase? And Iowa's a league of its own. 10 years ago, the Iowa Farm Bureau had a $30 million a year operating budget. They have a $110 million a year operating budget. Their membership has collapsed. And it's because they're an insurance company who are invested in these companies. All they care about are the companies. They cosplay as farmers. I mean, that is like what drives me nuts when I watch the Hawkeye football. America needs farmers. Like, well, where are they in Iowa?
Got another one over here. Oh, hang on. Before we do that, have Sonia come back.
A couple other solutions I would also suggest is, and you touched on it earlier, which is we need to put animals back on the land. That's a big starting point. But we have a lot of farmers who have been caught. We have a lot of corporate capture that's gone on. And we need to incentivize and try to get the contract growers out of these one-sided contracts. And I've had a number of contract growers who've actually come to me, and one of the farmers, contract growers that I reference in the book, told me, he said, I'll never get out of debt. He said, I'll die because there's so much debt. And then, they're given this song and dance about how they're gonna, the first several years, because they're servicing the big mortgage on these properties, and after that, you're gonna make big money. Well, they don't, because those operations require substantial repairs and improvements. So then they're in another round of deep debt and trying to get out. So yeah, so that, we've got to get people out of this. And we don't have, this is not a free market. It's a private club.
Here's the thing, I blame chicken. Fun little history fact. When this legislation was written 100 years ago in response to the jungle and Teddy Roosevelt, we didn't write chicken to the regulations because there weren't chicken slaughterhouses. You just killed a chicken in your backyard. That little missing word in history allowed Southern corporations took black sharecropping, that exploited model, applied it to chicken production. And what happened was chickens are getting a lot of market share when you engage in a really abusive system. USDA could have stepped in and be like, no chicken, behave like the other meats. But you know what USDA did? It allowed a race to the bottom. They call it chickenizations. Hogs chickenize. A state senator in North Carolina first did this in the poor black areas where he literally wrote regulations, he didn't exploit it. Iowa, the lead of Iowa, saw North Carolina getting all the market share, and Iowa was like, we're going to chickenize, we're going to destroy the family farm because we want to be number one in hogs. And the thing to keep in mind with North Carolina that's really scary is in Iowa, we inject our manure into the soil in those hog lagoons. In North Carolina, the water table is too high, so they have to spray it into the air.
And with that, we'll go to the next question.
The one time I was beeped on NPR is when I said hog shit.
Bonnie, go ahead.
Back to the checkoffs. For those of you that are not familiar with checkoffs, I'm a retired rotational grazing dairy farmer, so I understand a little bit about it, not all the details, but for those of you that are curious, the checkoffs get their money by when I sold my cow or a beef animal, they would take $1 a head. They still take $1 a head. So that's how they would get it. On the milk, it would be a certain cents per hundredweight. That's how I would get it. Those would be deducted from my things. I thought that would be helpful for you to know that. In addition to our Attorney General, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who I really appreciate, I want to reiterate and make it clear that, yes, he wants the stories, and realize that office cannot go out looking for problems. He cannot go looking for problems. But if you bring him an issue, you bring him a story, you bring that office something that he can look at and investigate, then he can get a foothold and start to go. But do not think he can research by himself. He has to have a reason. Bring him the stuff. There was one more thing I wanted to say. Yes, as you're looking at solutions, it makes me think of when I was lucky enough to go with Camping for Family Farms and the Environment out to Washington, D.C. And Sean knows this. There's a gal out there, Patty Rivera, that a couple of years ago was working on an innovative system change. Maybe you've met her already, but I think that you should talk to her if you haven't.
Well, I mean, that's the fun part is you don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There's a lot of people doing cool things already in America. First of all, also tell reporters that. If you see something cool, say something. Because that's what I realized. A lot of people doing the cool stuff, Midwesterners don't like to talk about themselves. You got to brag about it. Like if a school is doing something, here's an example of a really cool thing. Storm Lake, Iowa has 2 slaughterhouses, a Tyson's, turkey and pork. It's a very diverse poor slaughterhouse town. That school district, a lot of the workers also farm on the side because they want to farm crops from where they come from. The school district, and it's because I read the local paper because I know the editor, the school district's really, really good at incorporating that food into the school, but also teaching the other kids about the culture. First of all, those are great stories to read, but it's because of that. And like, how do you tell? You got to tell people this because a lot of reporters aren't making that much and they're moving a mile a minute. And they also Minnesota has you guys still have a good paper, the Star Tribune, compared to most papers in this country. Really lean into that.
I just wanted to bounce or piggyback off of Bonnie's comment too. If folks are interested in learning more about the Attorney General's work, Matthew, do you want to raise your hand? Thank you. You can go up and talk to Matthew later about that, but also too on examples that work. And you brought up Indigenous communities like the Oneida Nation in Wisconsin is doing incredible work. So that's also just like if you want a rabbit hole on something. But if you have comments on that too, feel free.
No, what shocked me is how much the casinos are behind these. I think that's really cool. I don't know. I went to there's that fancy restaurant in Minneapolis. They serve, I can't pronounce it. And they're getting ready to open like a barbecue place that's fast casual. Just like, it'd be kind of cool to eat barbecue deer. I don't know. But it's bison or whatever they have, wild turkey. There's just I think people, that's exciting and cool to see all this like food that grows around you that you didn't know you could eat. I mean, people like that. I mean, there's wild rice is what I've been researching a lot. I was, after I turned my book in, this is so random, I did a North Dakota and South Dakota road trip, but I went through Bemidji. And going through Bemidji is where I got my first wild rice bag. Oh, how do you say it?
Bemidji.
Bemidji, sorry. Sorry. I'm addicted to wild rice. I love it. And it's the only native grain to North America. It's so good. It has twice the protein of brown rice. It has that good crunch to it.
And you're also doing a great job of like praising Minnesota, which we love to do. So thank you. Okay, we have another question over here, Scott.
Thank y'all both for your books. It takes a lot of effort to put that together, and I'm grateful for it. And another book that's come out recently by Michael Grunwald.
We were just talking about that before this event.
I wondered if y'all had maybe heard about this, called I Think We're Eating the Earth. And I have not read that book yet. I feel like I need to, even though I'm fearful of it, because it seems like a core argument is that in order to protect the environment and in order to limit climate emissions, he believes we should double down on industrial scale agriculture. That's what I hear in the columns that he's written on that book. I'm just curious, y'all, if y'all read it, you could correct me on that, or if that's an accurate interpretation. If I were Michael Grunwald, what would you tell me right now about my thesis?
So just to add on to his thesis is we need to intensify production in certain areas so we can rewild the world, other parts of the country. So yesterday, I was presenting my book at Princeton University, and his mentor was in the room, and I didn't know that. Someone asked me my opinions on that book, and I gave it right away. And then his mentor spoke up, and we went at it. Because it's like, here's the thing, it's easy to say that from a room in Princeton. I was like, what you're basically saying is we need more sacrificial parts of this country. Like, I saw what it did to Iowa. What you're saying is we want more of that. Also, you're playing Russian roulette with disease. When you put that many animals in a metal shed, you're asking for disease outbreak. We're just gonna get another, I mean, you just know another COVID's gonna come out of China because these 10-story hog confinements. It's just stupid. I just find the whole thing, I find his whole thesis clickbait, and I have no evidence for this next statement. My gut tells me there's dark money behind that because they're really pushing fake meat and sell meat, and most likely that's a Silicon Valley person who wants an IP monopoly on that product. Because that book is not selling, but he's getting a ton of publicity, and I just know how this game is played. I just think, and I'm really afraid, I'm really afraid of what's happening with that book because people, they keep saying the same rhetoric Farm Bureau says. We got to feed the world. We got to do this. We got to feed the world. And it's just, keep in mind, let's just talk dairy for a second. Even though milk went up, generally milk has done this, kind of flat in America down. Our dairy consumption is going way up. And why? It's because it's for nacho cheese and cheddar cheese. Is it worth, I mean, also most of this is not occurring here. It's occurring in New Mexico in the West. Is it worth, it's not worth doing industrial dairy in New Mexico for nacho cheese at Taco Bell. Why are we subsidizing nacho cheese at Taco Bell? That's what he wants. I want to get away from that system. On top of it, the last thing I'll say is, not only is this model awful for the animals, it's awful for the workers. What used to be a dignified job with an animal is awful for the workers. when you're dealing with like pigs, especially are mad, are just not happy inside these. I mean, you talk to butchers, they can tell a confinement hog by the way the body looks because it's just not happy. The animal's in trauma the whole time. And so when you eat an unhappy animal, you know what I mean? It's bad juju. I just think that that whole book it's scary, but it's so funny that you brought that up because I was just ranting earlier, like because it's getting a lot of attention, but it's a classic thing we're seeing now that we'll use science to get our way out of this, and it's just like no, these are don't reinvent the wheel here. We know animals on like cows belong on pasture.
I'm not going to address his book directly, but and I haven't read it. I'm not sure that I will. But I wanted to tell you, like I have to tell you, this has been a really interesting journey. And just within the last 4 to 6 weeks, I received this publication called The Loss of Our Family Farms. It's a 1979 publication that was written by Mark Ritchie. Many of you will remember Mark Ritchie, former Secretary of State. But this goes back decades. There was what was called the Committee on Economic Development, and I'm going to make this publication. I'm going to give this to land stewardship. They can push it out to people if if you're interested in it. I think everyone should know about this. But this is decades in the making, and it was large corporations that were on this committee, and economists, and some of the corporations that stood to benefit directly included George Hormel and Company, Pillsbury, which is now General Mills, John Deere and Company, General Foods, all names that we recognize right here in Minnesota. They stood to benefit. But here's the most troubling part of this. This is on page 12. This is the toothpaste quote. The only way I know to get toothpaste out of a tube is to squeeze. And the only way to get people out of agriculture is likewise to squeeze agriculture. They had a goal to eliminate 1/3 of the farmers. When I read this publication, I could have screamed, I could have cried. I thought about all of the farmers that we know, family members, friends, pushed off the land, farmers who committed suicide, thought about my own parents who went through the farm crisis in the 1980s. People who blame themselves like they somehow did something wrong. This was all planned. This was organized. This has been decades in the making, and we have to take back control.
Let me just add on one thing was when I first started doing this, I realized in the back of people's minds where I'm asking to pay more for food. And so that's why I show that one slide of what we spend per person, but also I show this chart now, bacon prices adjusted for inflation. Because as Sonia said earlier, the 90s were like the bottom when things cratered. So before the 80s, bacon was here. And what you saw is when Wall Street capital comes to these markets, it drives the price down. So it goes down here. The family farm can't compete against Wall Street money. Guess what's happened since then? Bacon's not only up here, it's even higher. So you're paying more for by the way, it's a lower quality product. That bacon does not taste as good as a confinement. But it's story of regulatory cap. I mean, that is what they do is they flood the market with cheap capital, they drive the local thing out of thing, and then they gouge you. I mean, it's what Amazon's doing. I mean, it's predatory pricing is what they call it in econ. But you're not, that's what I go back to is we're paying the consequences of this, and it's expensive.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. So we're gonna go back there, and then these folks will be around.
Such a great segue to summarize. I really wanted to possibly, if you could expand on the power and control wheel. I think that might be a really great way for us to maybe have a proactive aspect of being walking out of here with something to do. That just sounds like such a fantastic. I definitely want to research and find out more about that, the political theater aspect of that. If both of you could comment on that, thank you.
I think the key, I mean, I see it on a case by case basis in terms of power imbalance in a marriage or other relationship. But the way And so it may be filing an affidavit. One of the favorite things I actually do in my job, I write someone's story and I put it in a sworn affidavit and they need to tell their story and about what has happened because they're a victim of domestic violence. And so, if you're in a power imbalance, and I'm sorry, men, I'm going to pick on you for a minute, but an easy way if you want to silence your spouse is stop giving her money. What's she going to do? If you've got a traditional marriage, that's one way so there's this huge financial imbalance immediately, but she gets to tell her story, and that helps to kind of level the playing field. So what we need to do is level the playing field, and we can't do it uh, one person, but you put everybody together, and what do you get? A choir. So let's use our voices.
One of the fun things I had researching was, so a lot of my book too is I just read newspaper articles and you see kind of a story over time. But what I did was I would follow up on people. Hey, you were one of the big activists in this big fight. How did things shake out for you? Kind of looking back on this stuff. And what I realized, and this is hard to talk about, especially in Iowa, is there's a degree of Stockholm syndrome in most of rural America now. People fought power and they lost. On top of it, they've had politicians of both sides, regardless of your political party, say, I'm here to help, and they don't do anything. I mean, how many people have done a song and dance or I'm going to do something about the meat markets? I mean, Biden said so much about doing something about meat monopolies. The fact is, meat got more concentrated under his watch. And so people don't believe you. So you have to earn their trust. I hate nothing more when a politician says, well, make me do it. No, you're the public servant. So I think it's up at this point now to show that you can. I mean, that's why I really focus on doing something locally and getting people into power. Is you got to show that you can move the ball down the field, because right now no one thinks you can. And I think that's why in Italian there's this phrase called politics of the artichoke. Like if you ever eat an artichoke, you take one thing at a time. I think meatpacking is the single best thing to start this conversation, because everyone in America can get behind going after these foreign backstate monopolies. I mean, JBS is cartoonish in its corruption. I mean, they're the ones employing middle schoolers in slaughterhouses in America, bribing the inspector, bribing. I mean, you name X, Y, and Z. I think start there, because you've got to show people you're here to play ball, and you got to puff out your chest a little.
Awesome. Well, and that's a good segue question too. I'm gonna let you both close with any last statements, but then kind of move into action piece and what people can do, and then we'll invite Matthew and a few others to come on stage for that. But first, yeah, if there's any closing statements that you guys want to leave folks with.
I'd like to read you just a quick section out of my book. It's just 2 paragraphs, so if you'll bear with me. In these pages, I hope to show that despite what the industry wants us to believe, most farm communities are not united in their acceptance of the corporate-driven farming model. We don't need to organize our economy, our communities, and our agricultural practices around the profiteering of Hormel, Cargill, Smithfield, Tyson, and other multinational giants. We must instead reclaim and celebrate what many generations of farmers embraced: nurturing the land and the animals, maintaining a sustainable food supply, promoting public health, valuing clean air and the opportunity to swim and fish in healthy local streams and lakes, and cherishing nearby neighbors and friends. In failing to align with these values, large corporate interests continue to create conflicts in rural areas, conflicts which then reverberate in America's cities and towns. The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer once wrote, "Action springs not from thought, but from a readiness for responsibility. We must wrestle the steering wheel back from the hands of the corporate driver. In rural America today, we must support the steady, growing resistance of people who are committed not to restoring an imperfect past that led to our current predicament, but to building a future in which we are no longer dependent on the corporate trough." Thank you.
I'll just add that never forget what you're trying to do here, the reforms you guys are pushing, is traditional. The system we have now is radical. It is radical that one man does 5 million hogs in Iowa. It is radical that, yeah, I mean, God, we can go through the list. That like take, I mean, most of your produce now is being imported in this. 40% of your produce is being, no, sorry, 40% of your vegetables, 60% of your fruit is being imported in this country. The system is expensive and it's bad tasting. So just remember that they're going to paint anyone that stands up, puts their head up as crazy, radical, whatever. They're the crazy ones, justifying a really broken system.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's give a big round of applause for you both being here tonight. So thank you.
We are also selling books in the back. We are happy to sign. They make great Christmas gifts. It is November.
Yeah. And before you get up from your chairs, though, I do want to invite Matthew, Amy, and I think Megan is Pam. Pam. Okay, great. I have a few actions for you all to hear about, and they'll be once they share their actions, they'll be in the back, so you can connect with them, or in front here. Yeah, you can come right here. And yeah, the space is yours to, there's, like Austin said, there's books in the back to purchase. I think both these folks will be around for a little bit, so if you have additional questions, feel free to grab them. And yeah, so we'll move into, you can hear about different actions that y'all can take tonight. So turn over to Matthew.
Hey, folks. Hello. Hey, folks. Matthew Sheets, as has been said. I am one of the organizers at Land Stewardship Project that focuses on policy in the animal ag industry and fighting factory farms. So a lot of what has been said is just music to my ears, of course, right? And just to reiterate one of the things that they, like both of these folks have said over and over and over again, is that getting together with other people in your community is one of the basic things that you can do, but it's also one of the most powerful things you do because you can go over to your local elected's house and knock on his door and ask why he's voting for this factory farm when you and your neighbors don't want it, right? That's a really powerful thing that you can do. That's worked in many cases. In fact, one of the operations that's been referenced by both of these folks that operates in both New Mexico and Minnesota, and the one that is building all those operations in the Dakotas that Sonia referenced is Riverview Dairy. They're from my town. So I am sorry to everybody else that my neighbors are exporting some of the issues that we're having to your communities as well. But just to move on that a little bit more, 2 years ago or so, actually, right before the last time that Land Stewardship Project, all of us were all in the same room for a all-staff retreat, which is also happening now. Our town got together because there was a operation that would pipe the gas from those dairy operations in our area all to one spot to move it into the natural gas pipelines. It was something that was going to allow Riverview to enrich itself on carbon credits from California and federal level entities, right? When we got the same 10-day notice that Sonia talked about, it's the exact same process that you get for any of these kind of operations. There was no pre-planning. I honestly went to this meeting thinking I was going to be one of the only people that had ever, that was going to speak out against this in my community, right? There wasn't much planning, anything like that. When I got in the room, it was completely packed of people that I didn't know. And now about a dozen of them are the people that I call whenever there's something happening in the community, regardless of what it is. So it can bring you together a lot by connecting with one another in your community around these issues. There's also something that we need to do on the statewide level, and that's also what I want to talk about, which is talking to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, as has been said multiple times, Minnesota has a wonderful Attorney General that has been helping us a lot with consolidation issues. We need to work on both the local level and the larger levels. And one of the things that we can do right now is talking to that Attorney General. So if you are I have a couple things, ways that you can do that today before you leave. One, if you're a farmer or somebody that is living near a large operation, I have a printout in the back that has a link that you can scan with your phone to 2 different report forms that you can take that you can fill out at the Attorney General's office. As Austin said, you can be completely anonymous if you so choose, or you can choose to take it further if you so choose, right? But one of them is the antitrust report form at the Attorney General's office. If you have any story about any kind of issues that you've had with a contract or any kind of processing issues or anything that you think demonstrates how there is an entity in your industry, in the livestock industry, that has power over you and your bottom line, share that story with the Attorney General. That's one thing. Two, if you're not a farmer but you care about this kind of work, I also have a postcard that you can send thanking the Attorney General for being an advocate for these kind of actions. So if you have any interest in filling either of those out, come back and see me. I would really love to talk to you all as well. So, yeah.
I have another fun action for you, but it is not really my action. It's Emily, our coworker, who does electoral work, and she has, with her team, has developed an electoral punch card. If you are a member of LSP, there's a chance that you got one of these in the mail. And now I'm going to read what Emily said because it's her work, not mine. We have heard a lot of bad news tonight, but also some good news. And it's hard to know sometimes how you can make a difference. Engaging in your local democratic and civic community is a great place to start. The bedrock of a strong community is the ability for the people who live here to have a say in the future that they want to see through various forms of local government. Once a year, we vote for electoral leaders. Some people are doing that right now, but they represent us all year long, and we need to hold them accountable, and that is where you come in. We are challenging people in the community to do 5 actions this month that will strengthen democracy in your own community. The very first action is meet with one local elected official and tell them something you're upset about. Maybe it's this, maybe it's something else. It's just building that relationship with an elected official. 2 is write a letter of support to your local newspaper for land stewardship project, for books, events like this, for something good that's happening in your community. You can also complete an action alert or sign a petition. We have information about that on our website, which you can get to from scanning this card. And then the 5th challenge is to attend a local government meeting. Maybe that's your city council or your county commissioners meeting. Maybe it's a soil health meeting, but that's another one. And then extra credit items are also listed on the website. There is a prize drawing. So when you fill out this punch card, you get entered to win a prize. The drawing is the 26th. You have to put your address on it and send it in by then. But you get an entry for every single action you take. So even if you only take one action, fill it out, send it in, and you have a chance of winning a prize. So I will be at the middle table in the back after we're all done here, and you can come and get a punch card and ask me any questions about that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amy.
This is on? Okay, great. Well, I'm the last speaker and everything's already been said. So repeat all of that and think about it in your heads. But I'm going to kind of give you a personal viewpoint of an LSP member and how I came to LSP. So small farm. And when I say small, I mean, we thought we were going to be able to raise 50 head of cows, have calves, make hay, and make money on the farm. You're not laughing. Okay. Well, we didn't laugh at first either, but we found out differently. We couldn't do that. For one thing, there was too much manure. We couldn't have that much manure on our land. We have a stream that runs from south to north through the whole piece of our property, and we were not going to spray or unload that manure on that land next to that stream. So that was the first problem we ran into. Well, we hung on for a long, long time breeding Simmental cattle. Eventually, the price of machinery caught up to us. Machinery breaks down, and bless my husband's heart, he can fix anything, but he couldn't keep fixing old machinery because that was all we could afford because the price of machinery became too high. So that's our story. We rented our land, and when we saw next neonicotinoid seed, if you all know what that is, okay, I see some people nodding, maybe some people looking questioning. It's the seed that's kind of purple, kind of fluorescent now, and it is a systemic insecticide in the seed so that when the plant grows, it kills the insects that feed on it. Any insect, any bird that eats the seed is in taking that insecticide in. I'm a stream tester as well for the Isaac Walton League, and we have watched the macroinvertebrates in the streams become smaller and smaller and fewer and fewer. And that's from, we think, the neonicotinoids seeping out of the seed into the soil, into the water. So we couldn't do that anymore. So now we're into CRP. When we started to get into CRP, we had to give a report on the insecticide that was put onto our soil and the herbicide. There was so much we couldn't do CRP the first year. We had to plant a cover crop that then had to be taken off to bring out that insecticide and herbicide. So that's what made us say to ourselves, we're not farmers, we're not ranchers, what are we? And my husband came up with it. He said, you know, we care about our land. We care about it for the future, not just us. I think we're land stewards. Well, lo and behold, along came this organization in Winona County that was doing some wonderful things. Frac sand, if you know about that. Thank you very much for that, by the way. And then the animal unit cap. And we had folks that wanted to destroy the animal unit cap so that more manure could be put on the soil to go into the streams. And you know where that goes. That goes into our aquifers and our wells. Well, bless LSP's heart, because when I became involved in that, I started to call the head of the MPCA. And guess what? He never answered the phone and called me back. I was surprised. Well, lo and behold, it was an LSP member that called me up and said, I got this number one time from John Link Stein, and he was the commissioner of the MPCA at that time during this crisis, at the beginning, really. He said, give this number a try. So I said, okay. So I did. I called that number, and by God, he picked up. And I had about a 5-minute conversation with the head of the MPCA. This will never happen again today. This will never happen, I don't think. If it does, please let us know. And he allowed the comment on that dairy farm to not be shut down. They wanted to shut down the comment period. And because LSP backed us in making sure that that wasn't going to happen, it didn't happen. The comment period went through. And that's a lawsuit that went through the courts for many, many years and actually just finished several months ago. But the people stuck with it. And that's why I support LSP, is because it's a grassroots organization. It's not I've been in a lot of organizations. It's not a hierarchical organization where you're being told always what to think, what to say, what to do. This is an organization where you go and you sit around a table with people and it's linear. And you talk and you let them know what your problems are and what you think, and they listen, and you have a conversation with people. So I want you to know that about LSP. And that's why we support LSP, and we will always support LSP. Now I got to check my notes, make sure I did everything. The other thing I really like about LSP, I was a teacher, okay? So I love information. I was also a library science degree. So I'm just like, information is my hobby. And LSP can give you information and knowledge that you wouldn't get otherwise. And that's extremely helpful to help you make decisions and to join in with people and hear what other people are doing on the ground. You know, when we were farming, we didn't always know what we were doing, but we could talk to people who had their feet on the ground and their hands in the dirt. And that was really, really helpful. I'm getting to the end now, so listen up. Here's the important part. The important part is what we've been saying, and you've all been asking, is now what do we do? Listen to some pretty dire situations, and I'll tell you what we do. We join organizations like this. I found out, my husband found out, a lot of people here probably found out too, that this is where the power comes. My one little phone call to the head of the MPCA really wasn't what made the difference. It was everybody here who's a member of LSP, who's always a member of LSP, and who show up to those things and talk to people and make a difference. So I would love to see you bring us all together in power and join LSP and help LSP continue the work they do. So thanks a whole lot for listening.